Hey guys, so chapter 1025 of One Piece just came out, and this this was a fun one. It goes by awful fast, which I only kind of say because the past few chapters have gone by really slowly, or I guess what I should say is that they felt really long. I feel like chapter 1023 in particular, a lot of people are just like, wow, it just keeps going. Because that was the chapter where we got all of the Zoro and Ushimaru, Shimotsuki stuff and Ryuma stuff, where we got Sanji and all the stuff with possibly his, Germa modification awakening. We got, the Lunarian reveal, the um, Inarashi and Nekomamushi going back to Sulong, and finally, I believe that chapter ended with the reveal of adult Momonosuke. So that was a very dense chapter with a lot of things going on, and that one felt very long. And on the topic of adult Momonosuke, we get to see an awful lot of that in this chapter. Um, but because it's mostly centered on that one scene, I guess it feels like it goes by awful fast. And it is some pretty hype stuff, especially from Kaido. I loved Kaido in this chapter, but we'll get into that a bit later. Because, like I said, the chapter starts off with Luffy on top of Momonosuke's head. He's trying to get him to fly because we know, obviously, Momonosuke has a fear of heights. And it was explained when, Shinobu was first going to age up Momonosuke that he would still have, the mentality of the 8-year-old he used to be now. In the 28-year-old body or however old he is now. So obviously he still has or retains this fear of heights that he developed thanks to Kaido all that time ago. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of a problem that he has to overcome before he can actually lift off the ground. Um, which, I mean, that's good to see. Obviously they outright said it was going to happen, but that, Momonosuke wouldn't age up mentally. But I mean, it's good to see that like the Oda didn't take this opportunity to just kind of like skip character development and make Momonosuke all of a sudden, super like likable, I guess, and a lot more mature. I guess more like Odin, because I assume obviously most people assume he's going to look fairly similar to Odin, and maybe even physically share some of Odin's strength. But at the very least, his character hasn't changed much. It hasn't, just been a cheat code. And all of a sudden, he's, a super mature and brave, person. So that's good to see. I'm glad that they didn't, or that Oda didn't go down that route because that obviously would have felt a little bit cheap and undeserved. But yeah, that's a bit better the way I see it. But yeah, anyway, that was just a quick check in before we go back up to the rooftop to see the aftermath of the big Thunderbagua clash that ended off last chapter. Uh, you know, Yamato and Kaido standing back to back. We see Kaido bleeding a little bit from his head, and Yamato actually is kind of standing still, and then a crack forms on her skin. And she actually like sheds skin, I guess, or like I don't know, or like destroys an outer shell or something. Some sort of weird thing happens here, where like yeah, I guess shedding skin is probably the best way to put it, because she looks pretty much unharmed, but she her like face cracks and all of it comes up and whatever. So I mean that's I guess some sort of ability of the mythical zone she has. Obviously, it's been kind of established that mythical zones have some sort of additional ability on top of just transforming into an animal of some sort. Um, like Marcus Fu obviously has the healing factor. Kaido's fruit can control the elements. We see him control lightning, fire, wind a bit, I guess, and so on and so forth. Orochi got his head cut off a few times and he's still kicking. Well, presumably, we haven't seen him since the last time he got it cut off by the scabbards, but considering how it went the first time, obviously, it's probably a safe assumption that he's still alive, um, etc., etc. So it maybe the Makami's ability was it? Now I already forgotten what her mythical zone actually is. I feel like it was the Makami. Um, yeah, I'm getting it mixed up in my head with all the other like ideas that were thrown out there before we actually got the reveal. Uh, but yeah, I think the Makami was the actual name of her the mythical creature of her expansion. I could be wrong, because again, I have a hard time remembering the Japanese folklore creatures and yokai and all the other stuff we've seen over the course of this arc in abundance. But yeah, she jumps out of the spirit shell, goes in for a big attack, bonks Kaido over the head. Kaido, his head goes into the ground briefly, and as he's getting back up, he kind of starts. We get some interesting dialogue from Kaido. The gist of it is that Yamato won't be able to escape her bloodline, like she's essentially trying to do by becoming Odin, I guess. And Kaido recounts the fact that everybody that's tried to help her has died. Ace, the samurai that we saw last chapter. And he says that you're going to end up alone because everybody that tries to help you ends up dead. So yeah, interesting dialogue from Kaido here. A lot of people are assuming that it's probably, kind of projecting a bit. Like this is probably similar to the experience that he had growing up, and that he's kind of assuming that his child will share the same fate or something. Especially because an interesting thing he mentions that is that Yamato is the offspring of an Oni. An Oni meaning like demon or devil or ogre or something. I don't know. It has a bunch of different meanings. Essentially, it's what Kaido is. Obviously, a lot of people theorized for a long time that since it took a long time for Kaido to get the name of his devil fruit revealed, that he was actually like a natural born dragon with a mythical Oni fruit. So obviously he visually depicts an Oni to the point that people were able to predict that he's an Oni in some way. Obviously, again going back to the Momotaro myth, the island called Onigashima literally means like ogre island. Oni being in the word. The Momotaro and the three, like the monkey, pheasant, dog, all fought in Oni on Onigashima. So yeah, I guess a lot of ties to Oni here. And he specifically says that Yamato is the offspring of an Oni, and Oni obviously referring to himself. Which is interesting. A lot of people have, jumped to the conclusion that Oni is a new race that has just been introduced. And when I read this, I personally didn't interpret it that way. Just that, people call Kaido an Oni, that he's just sort of referred to as an Oni, not necessarily that an Oni is its own race, which, again, it could be. I'm open to that idea. But just when I read that personally, I didn't interpret it that way. And I guess it has to do mostly with the fact of how, like, casually he says it. Oh, you're the offspring of an Oni. It's in like a small panel, kind of just it's mixed in with a whole bunch of other dialogue. This whole monologue that kind of goes on. It just seems very casual to be like the name dropping of like a huge I think a series defining race. You know, gives like for comparison, like we got like I was talking about chapter 1023. We got the reveal of King's Race, and King's Race was like it was it was so heavily built up, like with that interaction with Big Mom first, and Marco having this whole thing about like there's these race of gods atop the red line, and having these flashbacks to Whitebeard, and then finally getting that reveal when Queen name dropped it. It seemed like there was significant build up to King's Race, but to not get the same amount for this Oni race that Kaido is a member of just seems a bit odd, which I think is probably most of the reason why I sort of interpreted it as like Oni is just kind of like a title that he has due to his, overwhelming physical resemblance to an Oni. But I don't know, I could be wrong. Oni could be a confirmed like actual race, which if that is the case, I assume would make the Oni the third race that Big Mom is missing, being obviously the Narians, Giants, and now Oni. But yeah, that is interesting to see, I guess. But also, I will say that when he's going on about Yamato being the offspring of an Oni, he is just beating the crap out of Yamato. Like, Yamato's on the ground. We see him, like, whacking him with a few Kakurazaki infused clubs. And there's this one panel in particular where, like, Kaido's, like, face is all shaded and he's got his, like, club over his shoulder. If you've read the chapter, you probably know which one I'm talking about. And that just panel just looks so visually on. It looks cool, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And just a lot of, oh man, just the hybrid form of Kaido is so cool. Kaido in general, like his design has really, really grown on me, especially over the course of this rooftop thing. He just really is like physically imposing, which is, good for an emperor to see, obviously. Um, so I'm excited to see more of the fighting in terms of Kaido, which we will presumably get in the following chapters, considering how this chapter ends out. But we will get to that because we go back to Luffy and Momonosuke as they're sort of flying up to the roof, or well, back up to Onigashima first, I should say, because Momonosuke is finally lifted off the ground in a panel that's very similar to how it looked back in Punk Hazard when he flew Luffy out of like the trash chute or wherever they were. Like Momonosuke's got his eyes closed, and he's grabbing you can see him grabbing the flame clouds with his like talons or whatever. Just looks very visually similar to that whole scene back in Punk Hazard. But due to the fact that his eyes are closed, he kind of misses the roof a little bit. He actually goes crashing into the live stage, the festival hall, and we get the reaction of pretty much every single character that's there. We see Izo and Marco, we see Kawamatsu, we see Sanji and Queen, we see King and Zoro, we see Luffy still hanging on for dear life as he's getting, blasted through walls as Momonosuke is going through them. So, Momonosuke's flying. He makes his way into Kaido's castle in the back of the Onigashima and starts flying up the floors there. I don't know if he passes anybody while he's going up. Let's see. Oh, he passes Law and Kid fighting Big Mom. Very briefly. But yeah, just sort of, I guess, an excuse to give a small check-in on everything that's going on as Momonosuke's flying through all these floors and whatnot. But yeah, he makes his way to the roof eventually, despite all this trouble. And I do like the panel, especially of when he finally gets to the roof, because Yamato and Kaido are still just kind of having their conversation, and you just see there's a panel of Yamato, you just see very like small in the background, Momonosuke flying his way up. I think that was kind of funny. But yeah, he's finally on the roof. Luffy has finally returned to the roof after like 12 or something chapters. I think it was 1013 when he got knocked off by Kaido. I could be wrong. But yeah, Luffy's triumphant return. And we get a really nice, very cathartic scene as we get a combined Conqueror's Haki infused attack from Yamato and Luffy. Yamato going in for a big swing with a club called White Snake Rush, and Luffy making the surprise return of Gear 4th Snake Man, which makes this officially the first. He launches a Jet Culverin, just basic attack, but that makes that officially the first Gear 4th Conqueror's Haki infused attack, I believe, that we've seen from Luffy, which, I mean, and by the look on Kaido's face, it definitely hurts a good amount. And I imagine the combined strength of Yamato also has something to do with that. But yeah, and as quickly as it comes, Luffy's pretty much instantly out of Snake Man. So again, I've mentioned this a few times in like the past chapter reviews, just kind of that Luffy's getting like more comfortable with Gear 4th, I guess. Like he sort of just goes in and out of it freely, and he doesn't necessarily have the drawbacks, so long as he doesn't like use it excessively. Like obviously earlier when we saw him use Bound Man against Kaido, he went, all the way to the point where he ran out of Haki, and then he still had that 10 minute charge up time, and Zoro had to carry him around for a bit. But at the same time, we've seen him use it like against to one shot that one number on the live stage, and he was perfectly fine after that. So it's nice to see, I guess, more of him getting like used to Gear 4th, I guess, because we've definitely seen him use it in more like casual content, or not casual, but I guess he just uses it more briefly and doesn't have the same drawbacks when he uses it in like a short amount of time. But yeah. And with that, we get the final page of the chapter. Luffy on top of Momonosuke. Kaido goes back into his dragon form, full dragon boy. It's been a while since we've seen that dragon form, I think. Um, Last time we saw it was when the supernovas were all up there, I believe. No, actually, that's wrong. I think he used it to get back up onto the roof because he left for a little bit. You know, he, he bunked Kaido, or not Kaido, he's Kaido. He bunked Kinemon over the head, and then he went and chased Momonosuke, and then he saw Yamato on the roof, and he had to go back up to the roof with the dragon form. So, yeah, whatever. But anyway, we see him back in the dragon form. And we get a nice stare down with Momonosuke. Momonosuke finally declaring his name, Kozuki Momonosuke, the man who will be the shogun of Wano, which he once failed to do when Kaido was grabbing him over the burning Kozuki castle, and de-develop his pure heights or whatever. So yeah, and Luffy also declares that he's gonna be king of the pirates, so we get that kind of double declaration there. So yeah, Luffy is on the roof, Yamato is on the roof, Momonosuke is on the roof, and I will point out that Yamato has a very interesting piece of dialogue in which they refer to Momonosuke as a peach dragon. And the reason I point all this out is because Momotaro, sorry, in the Legend of Momotaro, was a boy that resembled a peach. So we've got an additional connection to that whole Momonosuke being Momotaro thing. On top of Luffy, the monkey, finally making his way up there, Yamato, the dog, obviously having been up there for a while. So yeah, we've got 3 out of the 4. Now we just need the pheasant, and Marco conveniently is no longer fighting King, so maybe he'll make his way up there next chapter or whenever we see this fight, break out or whatever. But yeah, with that being said, Bo, don't really have anything else to say in this chapter, so see ya.